I still remember that morning like a photograph that refuses to sit flat sun low, truck idling in the driveway, a clipboard in someone's hand, and a smile so practiced it looked like a prop. I pulled into my own yard, tired from a long run of jobs, and there she was, a woman with a sharp blazer, sharper eyes, holding court by the mailbox like she owned the street. "You can't park there," she said, and for a second I thought it was a joke until her tone settled into something I recognized: ownership. "My name is Jesse Hale. I've lived on Sparrow Ridge for 12 years, quiet street, leaning oaks, kids who ride bikes until dusk." The HOA president, Lorna Ashby, liked rules the way other people like religion. Rules were her language, fines were her sermons. At first it was petty. Trim your hedges, repaint the mailbox, move your trash cans an inch to the left. Little things. Enough to make you notice her, not enough to make you act. A week later, I was home, shower running, the kind of lazy afternoon you let the water think for you, when there was a knock that made my chest flip. Neighbors yelling downstairs, then the bright, all-business lights of police cars in my driveway. I wrapped a towel and went down thinking paperwork. Mistake, but the first officer's face was a map of something else. "Sir, we need to check the house," he said. "We had a call." Inside my closet, duct tape still stiff in the corners, sat a man who blinked like someone who'd been woken from a terrible dream. Alan Mercer, according to his license, was a contractor in his 40s with the kind of hands that knew what to fix and what to pry open. The officers cuffed Lorna on the lawn. Neighbors in pajama shirts stood on porches and watched, mouths open. The scene felt unreal, the kind of thing you watch on a late-night show and think, "Thank God that's not me," until it is. Lorna had called the police claiming a break-in. Someone else had called claiming harassment. The truth, as it often does, turned out to be Messier. Detective Ramirez led the investigation like a man mapping a crime out of crumbs. He found cameras disguised as rocks and garden ornaments, infrared markers on fence posts, a burner phone loaded with coordinates and texts like "Visit 14, duplicate keys," and a ledger full of payments that didn't add up. Those numbers shifted from curiosity to accusation once we traced them to private accounts and a P.O. box tied to a shell company. Every small thing started to stack. Duplicated keys, threats hidden behind fines, private payments wired for compliance. What truly surprised me was how the neighborhood reacted once the lid lifted. Maria at number 7 admitted to me, voice low, that she never complained because she was terrified of being that family. Mr. Tompkins, who'd watched Sparrow Ridge grow from dirt roads, pulled out a battered envelope full of letters demanding fees for work he never ordered. The grocery store became a confessional. People traded stories between the bread aisle and the register, each anecdote a new stitch in a pattern. Suddenly, those little humiliations looked like a system. Alan agreed to tell his story, and it was the kind of confession that makes you steady yourself against a wave. He wasn't malicious. He called himself practical. "They asked me to organize access," he said, and the understatement made my jaw ache. Organize, apparently, meant copying keys, setting up cameras, and compiling dossiers on homeowners who balked. When he balked back, he said, they threatened exposure, larger fines, or both. When he tried to quit, payments mysteriously continued to his accounts. When he protested, someone broke a window. We started to organize because the alternative was to let control calcify. Organizing looked like emails that felt boring and urgent, spreadsheets with transaction dates, and neighbors meeting in living rooms under the pretense of book clubs. It was tedious, but those folders and PDFs became our arsenal. We printed bank records, matched times to fines, and underlined dates. The DA's office listens to paper and to the sound of ordinary people refusing to be invisible. There was a moment, in the middle of all the slow work, where the story shifted into something cinematic. A receipt slipped into evidence, a flash drive found in a storage unit, a clip from a hidden camera that placed Lorna outside my kitchen the week she fined my neighbor $500 for non-compliant landscaping. The small, stupid things are the ones that break a big lie. A timestamp, a bank transfer, a voicemail with a brittle laugh at the end. Put together, they didn't feel small at all. Confrontation, for me, wasn't a public fist fight. It was a hallway outside the municipal courtroom under fluorescent light that makes everyone look both honest and exhausted. Lorna walked like someone bred to chair meetings. Her blazer was a solemn costume. She looked at me and said, "You should have left things alone, Jessie." I told her, calmly, that I hadn't been alone, that neighbors had stories, that paper wasn't rumor. She smiled thin and practiced, and then her eyes flicked away. It was a small collapse, but the kind that can topple entire stories. The trial was as public as a parade and as intimate as a family dinner. Neighbors took the stand and said the things they'd been afraid to say aloud, about fines that arrived after arguments, about garden statues suddenly cited as violations, about inspections timed to embarrass. Accountants drew lines from shell companies to personal accounts. Ramirez narrated surveillance clips that placed Lorna where she had insisted she hadn't been. In court, the ledger was patient. The jury listened to numbers that don't bend to spin. There were scenes that could have been written for drama, the DA laying out transfers that matched dates of alleged maintenance, a string of voicemails that showed a pattern of intimidation, a neighbor who cried when they read a bill for work they never approved. Lorna tried playing martyr in the press. "I kept the neighborhood safe," she said in interviews with a calm that sounded rehearsed. The ledger didn't care for slogans. The jury didn't, either. We didn't expect a fairy tale ending. Power vacuums invite their own predators, and oversight must be nurtured. After the conviction, though, life started to claw its way back to ordinary rhythms. People who'd been silenced found a way to speak. We set up a relief fund for those hit hardest by fines, created a transparent oversight committee, and instituted public audits. The storage unit became a shared tool shed. We planted a maple in the park like a promise, small, stubborn, and green. One of the most human scenes after all that legal paperwork was a block meeting where someone brought store-bought pastries and someone else tried to organize a neighborhood watch. A teenager, hair wild and braces catching the sun, raised his hand and said, "Can we just promise not to be weird about wind chimes anymore?" The room laughed a laugh like relief, and for a beat it felt like a normal neighborhood again. That laugh mattered. It meant we didn't have to check our mailboxes with clenched jaws. I'm not trying to sell a tidy moral. Families lost money, some relationships frayed, and trust takes longer to rebuild than a court can mandate. There are still lines we watch, still bylaws that need clarifying, still a hunger for vigilance. But I watched ordinary people choose accountability over silence, and that choice is a kind of victory. It's small, messy, and real. If you're wondering what change looks like in practice, it's often boring: regular audits, transparent meeting minutes, a mailbox where complaints are logged, neighbors who call each other back. The glamour is absent, and that's the point. Boring systems prevent predatory charm from becoming a business model. So tell me, has power ever crept into your community in a way that surprised you? Would you stand up, or would you keep your head down? Drop a comment below, tell us what you know, tell us what you do, or share a story that might help someone else speak up. Share this with a neighbor if it rings true. Subscribe if you want more stories about ordinary people facing complicated things. And if you like this one, give it a like, because community starts with listening, and sometimes listening is the first step. If you want to hear examples of how other neighborhoods organized and reclaimed their streets, ask below, and I'll share more stories.